This is Jim Inkster, and coming today on the show, we will visit with Gary Johnson, former governor of New Mexico, running for president. He started off seeking the White House as a GOP stalwart, and now he is a libertarian. And he could be the worst nightmare for one of the nominees of the major parties. He's a candidate who has the capacity to get gobs of votes, at least enough that could swing the election one way or the other if the election is close. Today, good news for President Obama. The unemployment rate dropped to 8.5%. So we will talk with Governor Johnson about this and many more issues, including his support for the legalization of marijuana. Also, John McGinnis, Louisiana's foremost political analyst. Where will he be Monday? Might surprise you.
Ready in case there's a need, and that means that he's talking about maybe a special election for lieutenant governor should Jindal move on and Jay Darden become governor.
We'll be back to wrap it up with John McGinnis, and we're slated to hear in a bit from former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson, Libertarian candidate for president, back in 1 minute. This is Jim Inkster. You're listening to 89.3 WRKF in Baton Rouge. 297-5633 is your number. Outside our area, it is 877-217-5757. Excuse me, my voice is in short supply, but I think we'll be okay the rest of the way. John McGinnis, before we part company with you and turn the floor over to Governor Gary Johnson of New Mexico, the former governor, seeking the Libertarian nomination for president, a quote from you in your latest weekly missive from Buddy Romer saying, "I have enough votes in Iowa to start a bowling league."
Great. It was a tweet he sent out, but making light of the fact that he got probably less than 50 votes in the Iowa caucus. He didn't compete there. He didn't try. He's kind of based his whole campaign on New Hampshire, and they had a poll out a week ago that showed him at 2%. He called that good news. So, but he couldn't get the oxygen. He couldn't get on the debates. I wrote a column saying that when Rick Perry and Romer they were both done in by the debates, Romer couldn't get on one, and Perry did, and they got undead by both. So that's been his problem. He's not been able to get his message out, but he wants to himself get the nomination of this group called Americans Elect, which will very well funded ballot initiative to get a third way candidate on the ballot in all 50 states, and they're going to pick a nominee by internet voting in June. And right now, Romer is, if you go to their website, Americans Elect, he's fourth on the number of people, the people who are being tracked, followed, and have information about all the candidates there. And the people above him are one's Barack Obama and one's Ron Paul. They're not going to get the Americans Elect nomination. But it's interesting that Roman might. I think Gary Johnson is on that list too of people who are being considered by this new group. It could be, we're seeing some new twist in this presidential politics, and we're going to see some more ahead. And I think that the big question would be whether Ron Paul can be kept on the Republican reservation, or will he mount a third party candidate?
Could be an interesting year as far as third party candidates, and we've got a gentleman joining us in just a moment who I think will get a lot of votes. Well, thank you, John McGinnis. Good luck to you and the Tigers Monday in New Orleans.
All right, thanks, man.
Take care. Bye-bye. And now we are joined by the former governor from the great state of New Mexico, Gary Earl Johnson, a man who made a fortune in American business, became governor, and is running for president now as a libertarian after seeking the Republican nomination for president. And good morning to you, Governor Johnson.
Jim, great being on with you. And, I was excluded from 16 of the 18 debates, and that really had a self-fulfilling prophecy. That self-fulfilling prophecy was that, shoot, I wasn't even running. I mean, talking to potential supporters, hey, Gary, we love you. We love what you've got to say, but I'm looking at a poll here, and your name's not even on the poll. Are you still in the race? So I'll tell you what, it has not been a fair process, in my opinion. And I do believe that the fastest growing segments of the Republican Party are those that are libertarian leaning, a la Ron Paul. I think I'm delivering the same message that Ron Paul is, albeit a bit different. But this is about a message, and so I'm excited about the fact that, and I am vying for the Libertarian nomination. That is no done deal. But if I am the Libertarian nominee, I would continue to deliver a message unchanged from the message was delivering as a Republican. But
all right, hold on just a second. We're going to try to get Gary Johnson to a little better place, but he was governor of the state of New Mexico from 95 to 2003, 8 years, and his first foray for office was running as a candidate for governor in his home state. And Gary Johnson is a man who has had vast success in the business world, was a Republican stalwart in New Mexico, but Governor Johnson, it seems that being a Republican in New Mexico may be somewhat different than being a Republican in Louisiana or Alabama or in other places in this country. What's happened to the party where you made your mark as governor and now have moved on to the Libertarian side? What's happened to the GOP in this country?
Well, I really believe that the biggest growing segment of the Republican Party are those that are libertarian-leaning. It's always been about the message. I think I'm delivering the same message as Ron Paul, albeit a little bit different. But the biggest growing segment of American politics today are independents and those that are declining to state. I really think that like I say, I was trying to give a voice to Republicans that are fed up with the fact that Republican is just a big government party right along with Democrats. That both parties have their hand out, that the country's for sale, and that if you're willing to pay for it, you can get your special loophole or compensation. And you know what? This country shouldn't be about that. It should be about a level playing field that all of us can have access to the American dream if we're willing to work hard and innovate.
297-5633 or 877-217-5757, wherever you are, for Governor Gary Johnson, who is running for president, a guy who is also quite a triathlete. He's certainly a Renaissance man, born in Minot, North Dakota, the hometown of one Dale Deward Brown. I'm sure if you grew up in Minot, you must know about Dale Brown.
I moved from Minot when I was 5 years old, lived in Aberdeen, South Dakota for 8 years prior to moving to Albuquerque when I was 13, and I've lived in New Mexico ever since. And I live in New Mexico. I live just north of Taos because the skiing there is as good as anywhere on the planet, and that's my passion.
There you go. And you may know Mike Martin, the chancellor at LSU, who was president at New Mexico State University, I think shortly after you were governor of New Mexico. So there are some Louisianians who have at least some connection to Governor Johnson. But your state has also changed politically through the years. It is certainly a swing state in presidential elections.
No, it's a state that's 2-1 Democrats, remains 2-1 Democrats, and in New Mexico, as with the rest of the country, the biggest growing segment of politics in New Mexico are independents and those that decline to state. I really think that people are fed up with the fact that this country's for sale. The outrage of Occupy Wall Street. It's unfair. It's not fair. And based on my 2 terms as governor of New Mexico, good government was easy. It wasn't hard. And easy starts with looking at issues first and partisan politics last, if even existent.
Well, you're stating your case on issues that perhaps unfortunately, have not been focused on mostly in your campaign. The issue that's gained the most attention, and I think you know it as well as anybody else, is your support for the decriminalization of marijuana. Uh, are you standing by this? Is this something that you're going to accent as you seek the Libertarian Party nod?
Well, absolutely. I think it's indicative of all the issues, and by indicative of all the issues, that we should look at the issues without regard to politics. Let's look at the issues for what they are. And in this case, when it comes to marijuana, since 1999, my second term in office, I advocated legalizing marijuana, control it, regulate it, tax it. We cannot continue to arrest 1.8 million people a year in this country on drug-related crime. We now have 2.3 million people behind bars. Why don't we make the analogy between alcohol and marijuana? And when you look at the debates, when you look at all the Republican candidates and their response to border violence, with the exception of Ron Paul, everybody wants to take on the gun violence with more guns, as opposed to, look, this is a prohibition phenomenon. When it was alcohol, it was disputes being played out with machine guns on the streets, as opposed to in the courts. Let's get these disputes in the courts. And so, yes, I advocate legalizing marijuana. Should it be a crime? Is it a bad choice to drink? I think it's a bad choice to drink. I don't drink. I don't smoke pot. But look, I have smoked pot and I have drank. And I will tell you, without exception, marijuana is safer than alcohol in every single category. And that's never going to mean that you're going to be able to smoke pot, become impaired, and get behind the wheel of a car. But that ought to be the focus.
Did you inhale?
I did inhale. I'm one of the 100 million Americans who have inhaled. And but for maybe some good grace, I'm not in jail along with 100 million other Americans. But there are tens of millions of Americans who've been subject to the criminal justice system as a result of our drug laws, that but for our drug laws would not have been subjected to the criminal justice system.
We have some folks waiting in line to talk with Governor Gary Johnson. 8 years he was governor of New Mexico, and now he is running for president of the United States. He was in some of the debates with his GOP mates, and I gather, other than Ron Paul, you were not all that impressed with the others.
Well, if you want to take Mitt Romney, for example, I only have one issue with Mitt Romney, and that is I have no idea where he stands on any issues. And Rick Santorum has said that when it comes to you and I as individuals, that government perhaps makes better decisions. And he's referring to marijuana. He's talking about gay rights. He's talking about the wars, our foreign conflicts. He's thinking government makes better decisions than you and I as individuals. And we couldn't be more opposite. I believe that one thing the government should do is to empower you and I to make choices that only you and I should make. And that those choices that you and I make should not adversely affect anyone else. But he's willing to stand up and say that government should be the arbiter as opposed to you and I. And that's a fundamental difference. I am a fiscal conservative to the core, and in conjunction, hand in hand with that fiscal conservatism, is the fact that let me make decisions. So a woman's right to choose. I fundamentally believe that a woman should have the right to choose.
So would you describe yourself as a social liberal?
I think, using a broad brush, you could say that the Libertarian Party are fiscally conservative to the core, smaller government, and using a broad brush, socially liberal. Okay. The notion that when it comes to the decisions that you think in our own lives, those are decisions that you and I should be making, not the government.
Please be brief with Governor Gary Johnson, candidate for president, now a libertarian. Did you officially change your party registration?
Jim, I did. I officially changed my party registration, and like I say, I look forward to trying to offer up an alternative to what I view as just an homogenous two-party system that it really doesn't matter which party is in office. President Obama passes a health care plan. I'm opposed to the health care plan. It's unaffordable. It is absolutely unaffordable. But let's not forget that a few short years before that, when Republicans controlled both houses of Congress and the presidency, and as a Republican, I was outraged over the fact that they passed a prescription health care benefit, which at that time was the largest entitlement program ever passed in the history of this country. In my opinion, that was unaffordable then. We were borrowing money then. We're borrowing more money now. And it's borrowing and printing money. We need to stop printing money. We need to balance the federal budget now.
Chad and Baker. Chad, you're on the air with Governor Gary Johnson.
Good morning, Mr. Inkster and former Governor Johnson. Just two quick points. One, on immigration stance. I don't know your comments on a story about, I think it was a 14-year-old girl who was mistakenly deported after she gave a false identity to officials, I believe in the Dallas area, and she's now pregnant and in Colombia, and the Colombian government will not release her. And also another point on maybe whether you support or not support a constitutional amendment, maybe to get the money out of politics, and also to, as former Governor Romer said, let the leader be free to lead. Just those comments.
Well, I am advocating a balanced budget. I am promising as President of the United States to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. Now, I can't promise to balance the budget because that's going to take legislative cooperation to do that. But along with proposing a balanced budget, a document that's going to set forth a 43% reduction in government spending, I also advocate throwing out the entire federal tax system and replacing it with the fair tax. For those listening, I would love for you all to get online, fairtax.org. I think it really reboots the American economy for the next 100 years. It makes American goods and services 23% more competitive. So when it comes to export, that's the answer when it comes to China. Because it does away with the existing federal tax system, income tax, corporate tax, withholding, in a zero corporate tax rate environment, if the private sector does not create tens of millions of jobs, I don't know under what situation the private sector creates tens of millions of jobs. But as to your point, taking money out of politics, I think enacting the fair tax will issue the pink slip to half of Washington lobbyists that are there to try and grab special compensation, special loopholes, if you will, for their particular interests. Enact the fair tax, half Washington lobbyists go away. The money leaves the political system in lieu of a tax system that is, as the name implies, it's fair. The more money you make, the more fair tax you'll pay, and it won't promote saving.
Dan downtown. Dan, you're on the air with Governor Johnson.
Yes, Governor, do you think that the unfair playing field will continue as long as the Supreme Court continues to say that big business and its lobbyists, with their access to legislators and executive branch regulators, does not impinge on the access that the average citizen has?
All right, hold on, Governor Johnson. Thank you, Dan. We're about to take a 1-minute break, and we will do this, and we'll get Governor Johnson's response to Dan downtown. 297-5633 or 877-217-5757, or you may send us an email at jim@wrkf.org if you would like to talk with Governor Gary Johnson, former governor of New Mexico, now running for president of the United States as a libertarian. Back after a 1-minute timeout on 89.3 WRKF. This is Jim Inkster. You're listening to 89.3 WRKF in Baton Rouge, 877-217-5757, wherever you are, for Governor Gary Johnson, man who led the great state of New Mexico for 2 terms, 95 to 2003, now running for president. He turned 59 years old on January 1st, and he is on the trail and visiting with us, and we thank him for doing so. And Governor, would you expound upon the question posed by Dan downtown regarding lobbyists? He picked up where Chad and Baker left off, but your thoughts.
Well, as I heard Dan, he was talking about campaign finance reform. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, he mentioned that, definitely.
Yeah.
And the influence.
So I really think when it comes to campaign finance reform that what we need is just transparency, just 100% transparency, something that does not exist right now with these super PACs. And that if we had 100% transparency, that would go a long way. I say this tongue-in-cheek, and that is that politicians should wear jackets similar to NASCAR drivers with logos commensurate with the size of the donation on the jackets.
297-5633. Eli in Sherwood, you're on the air with Governor Johnson.
Good morning, gentlemen. I was just wondering, Governor Johnson, you said that you would propose a 43% cut in spending by the government, and being that there has to be some assumptions since there should be no government help as a libertarian. What about the people who starve or go without heating because of these policies? Are they truly on their own, or do you think people should take the money they save from the tax cut and just spend it directly on the poor? I'll take my answer off there.
Well, so this is also an opportunity for libertarians to define themselves a little bit better. I think libertarians really want a balanced budget. Libertarians want smaller government. So a 43% reduction in government spending in the way that I would lay it out is that we still would have Medicaid and Medicare. I oversaw the reform of Medicaid in the state of New Mexico, taking it from a fee-for-service model to a managed care model. I thought we set up much better healthcare networks, and we saved a whole lot of money in New Mexico. At the time, I believed that if the federal government would have block granted the state of New Mexico 43% less money, taken away all the strings and the mandates as to how the money got spent, and allowed me to oversee Medicaid delivery, that I could have done that effectively. I believe that. Same with Medicare, that federal government block grant the states fixed amount of money, 43% less than what we're currently spending, that we could oversee effective delivery of health care to those over 65. I think, it's not very sexy, and it doesn't sound, it doesn't, for some it doesn't resonate, but what we have to understand is, unless we live within our means, we're going to find ourselves with nothing, no health care at all, as opposed to health care for those that are truly in need. And I'm in the latter. I think there are those that are truly in need, and that we can provide for those, but we should do that in the context of not spending more money than what we take in, because there are ramifications to that. And in this case, I think it's going to end up being a monetary collapse, and a monetary collapse is inescapable given the mathematics of continuing to spend and print money to the tune of 43% more than what we're taking in.
297-5633. Still time to go with Governor Johnson. Miriam in Inniswald sends an email saying that systems of nature span human constructs like property lines and state and national boundaries, so the management of the environment also must span boundaries, hence the Clean Air Act, Endangered Species Act, and migratory bird protection laws, the EPA, various fisheries limits. She says, as a libertarian, a small government proponent, how would you manage the environment we all share and upon which we all ultimately depend? Governor Johnson.
Well, the EPA does have a role, but in a balanced budget, in a balanced budget situation, the EPA is going to have to do with 43% less than what it's currently spending. I think libertarians would point out that in lieu of government, that legal action can still be taken against polluters. So I'm not suggesting doing away with the EPA. What I'm suggesting is a 43% reduction in the EPA. I'll also say that there are bad actors out there. New Mexico, there were polluters in New Mexico, and but for the Environmental Protection Agency in New Mexico, they'd still be polluting to this day. So government has a role to protect us against those that would do us harm. And I do consider us having harm done to us by companies or individuals that would pollute.
Jennifer in La Paz asks, who do you think the Republican nominee will be? Who will win the GOP nomination?
Well, I think the GOP nominee is going to be Mitt Romney. And as I said earlier, I only have one issue with Mitt Romney, and that is I have no idea where he stands on anything. And in my opinion, it will end up being more of the same. And that would be elected President Obama's health care plan or prescription health care benefits if Republicans are in, and all of this contributing to what is mathematically going to be a monetary collapse. The fact that so much money is being printed, and the result of that is going to be a dollar that's not going to buy a thing.
Well, did you know him when he was governor of Massachusetts? Governor Romney?
Hello?
Yes. Did you know Governor Romney, Governor Johnson, when he was leading the state of Massachusetts?
I did not, but I met him at the Olympics. I thought he did a great job at the Olympics, and I will tell you, I really like Governor Romney. I mean, as an individual, he is very personable. It's just, as I said before, I have no idea where he stands on any issues whatsoever.
Well, that is really, I think, the greatest concern for people who are on both sides of the political aisle in assessing him. But nonetheless, as you know, some people will not vote for him because he's a Mormon. Now, that's an unfortunate part of the reality of politics. But what do you think of that?
Well, I think it is unfortunate. This is a country based on freedom of religion, and I firmly believe that. I firmly believe in, you're back to individuals making choices that only you and I as individuals should make. His faith is a personal decision that should not play a role in his running for president.
Now, you're a guy who has had great success in business. You did it a different way than Mitt Romney, but the backstory of your life has not been told to the American people in great depth. But understand it started while you were working as a door-to-door handyman in college.
Well, I started a one-man handyman business in Albuquerque in 1974, and actually grew that business to employ over 1,000 people in New Mexico, the largest construction employer in the state. And that was over a 20-year period. Jim, I sold that business in 1999. No one lost their job, and business is doing better than ever. So I've been an entrepreneur my entire life, and I ran for governor of New Mexico with the promise that I was going to run state government like a business. Best product, best service, lowest price. And having done that for 8 years, I will just say it was easy. It wasn't hard.
And you've competed in how many triathlons?
I have probably competed in at least 100 triathlons. I've competed in the Hawaii Ironman 4 times, which I feel really grateful to have done. And I have had the good fortune to summit Mount Everest, the highest mountain on the planet. I've had the good fortune to stand in that spot.
Well, how was that experience, climbing Mount Everest?
It was everything that I hoped it would be. Halfway around the planet, Nepal. I thought it was very spiritual, and it was in a place with no running water, no transportation of any kind, no motorized vehicles. This was from Lukla on up to base camp, on up to the summit of Mount Everest. But what I saw was a people in Nepal that had absolutely nothing and were very happy. Seemingly the opposite of us here in this country. We seem to have everything, and I don't know if we're as happy as we should be.
Well, you are a guy, you don't smoke, do you? I would think not. Don't drink. I understand Governor Johnson does not even drink coffee.
In my life, I've gone years without drinking coffee. Jim, I've had a cup of coffee this morning.
Yeah, okay. And we know that once or twice in your life you have inhaled and consumed marijuana.
Well, and as I've said very publicly, at one point in my life, I smoked marijuana. It was something that I did. I think I'm not alone in that category. I think millions of Americans have done the same. And what it gave me is an insight that, number one, that it's a handicap. Don't smoke pot. But secondly, you know what? That's a decision that you should make. And having smoked marijuana and drank alcohol, neither of which I do today, I will tell you that without exception, marijuana is safer than alcohol in every single category, and yet we continue to criminalize marijuana use.
Well, Governor Johnson, we wish you on the campaign trail, and look forward to another visit here and seeing you in the great state of Louisiana.
Jim, thank you very much. Great being on with you.
Thank you. Take care. Governor Gary Johnson. And Monday, Governor